Right, hello then everybody. Welcome to AC, Adam Clery, FC, football channel, you see. You get it. And Newcastle United won the first trophy domestically in 70 years. I could just leave it there. I could just never ever talk about that again and die incredibly happy. However, despite the fact we only launched this channel like 2.5 days ago, we have had some requests to do a video on it. So yeah, let's do that. And for me, this is a story about Eddie Howe, because this was a tactical masterclass on par with anything you'll see across Europe this season. And right now, will show you how he did that. Right now, yes, very quickly before we get started, welcome once again, ACFC. Can't believe they let me call it that. This is only the second video properly on the channel, and it takes a while to get a cool state-of-the-art football analysis studio up and running. So there is a ways to go yet, but there is enough here with which to make videos. Thus, I am making videos. So please subscribe. Please tell all your friends. I cannot believe we got 13,000 subs in 2 days. I legitimately have not felt this deeply touched since I had to go have my prostate looked at last year. So, very healthy, I was told. Anyway though, yes, the football. Eddie Howe basically in this game presents his very own episode of the High Performance podcast about how you control a game of football without ever really controlling the ball in the football. Only 34% possession and yet 17 attempts on goal to 7. Nearly twice the XG of Liverpool, if you care about XG, and their best chance statistically coming when they were already 2-0 up. Like, they were more than worthy winners in this game, and for me, that was largely down to how he set them up. Like, don't get me wrong, individual performances, we will talk about that. None of this worked without enormous individual performances, but the core of it all, you can trace it all back to the setup. So, in its simplest terms, Eddie Howe basically accepted that Newcastle weren't going to have a lot of the ball in this. So the main thing they worked on, the core of their plan, was about what they did without the ball, what they did out of possession. Liverpool set up in the 4-2-3-1 that we expected. Szoboszlai likes to get up and support their centre forward. Gravenberch and McAllister kind of rotate around, so sometimes as a 1, sometimes as a 2, but it's more or less what they would have expected. And Eddie Howe basically made the decision to go man for man with them across the entire pitch, which is a very ballsy strategy because it leaves you with loads of 1v1s in this game against an opponent who is allegedly technically superior. That could go very wrong very quickly. Like, Liverpool would normally love teams to try and do this with them, because then all of a sudden you start dragging players out of position, you find little pockets of space, you create overloads. It's quite easy to play through that if you start winning all of these 1v1s. That's why most teams against them just go and defend in a block, like in a shape, and stay quite disciplined in it. But the first noticeably clever thing Eddie Howe does with the setup here is he takes what is theoretically, and also literally, 11 versus 11 and turns it into 11 versus 12. Because obviously the midfield matches up perfectly here. You've got one pivot for their 10 and then 2 8s to match up their 6s. Although here, he actually swapped Tonali and Joelinton and had Joelinton sitting in the pocket. I'll tell you why he did that in a little bit. Obviously the back 4 comfortably covers Liverpool's front 3. And then Isak, Murphy and Barnes lock onto Robertson, Van Dijk and Konate. And you're right, very well observed. That does leave Jarrell Quansah all on his 1s at right back. But the clever part about this was that the job of Tino Livramento was to be 2 people. If Liverpool were in Newcastle's half and pushing them back, he was man-marking Mo Salah, as you would expect him to do. But when Liverpool had the ball in their own half and Newcastle were pressing them high, which was their main game plan, he would then jump from Salah all the way up to Quansah. And this is a monumental ask of one player, to mark not only the most dangerous attacker in Europe, but to then keep sprinting 50 and 60 yards up the other end of the pitch to stop the right back being able to play forward in him. But Livramento, the first individual I'm going to highlight here, did that job absolutely flawlessly. And the thing is, if you'd have told Arne Slot in advance of this game that this is what Newcastle were going to do, he would have been licking his lips and rubbing his little dome at the prospect, because Look who that leaves free. Either you just go direct long into him over the top of Livramento, or you have Quansah play into one of your many excellent midfielders and you effectively bounce the pass around him. Like, the solutions are simple and obvious and really good. And it is right here that you start to appreciate just how good those individual performances from Bruno, Tonali and Joelinton were. Because this relatively simple idea of get the ball into the midfield and then get it out to the relatively unmarked Mo Salah was never on. They hounded that Liverpool midfield. They never let them turn. They never gave them the space to do it. They suffocated the life out the centre of the pitch. And I'll prove it here, right? Because this is Dominic Szoboszlai's entire pass map from the game. And just take a second. How many times from the centre of the pitch do you see him playing successfully into the space where Mo Salah would have been? Like, literally, there is one, and that is in the 93rd minute when Newcastle have 11 players behind the ball. It's not incisive, it does not open them up. And what about Gravenberch, I hear you ask? Well, here is his, and he gets one really good, successful one the entire way down the touchline, skipping past Livramento, but look what happens here. He actually makes the recovery run really successfully, stops him getting down the byline, and by the time Salah comes back into the middle, Newcastle have got men back behind the ball. It did not open them up. But what about Alexis McAllister? He's the more creative of the three, right? Well, yes, he did get exactly one of those passes off. And lo and behold, that was the thing that led to Liverpool's best chance of that entire first half. The one time they slipped through that net, they looked really dangerous, but it happened literally one time in 102 minutes. And this is just what's so gutsy and clever about Eddie Howe's strategy for this game, because he makes the match effectively just loads of critical 1v1s across the entire pitch, 1v2s in Tino Livramento's case, and he backed all three of his midfielders to win those 1v1s. And if you win three in the centre of the pitch, you're almost certainly going to win that game of football. Like this, and I love this, is every single tackle, recovery, interception, every single time the three of them, just the three of them, went and took the ball off Liverpool. And bear in mind, it doesn't even show pressures. So every time a Liverpool player got the ball and felt like sticky, hot Brazilian breath on the back of his neck and just had to go backwards in a panic, it doesn't even show you those. This is just all the times they took it off them. Like, it is impossible to play against a team that are bullying you like this in the centre of the pitch. But Adam, I have a longer than 4-minute memory. I remember you saying this ground game was only one of the ways they could get into Mo Salah. What about just going over the top of Livramento? What about just going over the top of the press? Why didn't that work? And you like this. Well, when Newcastle pressed high and Tino Livramento locked onto Quansah, this does still leave a 3v3 at the back. Both Shah and Burn are there to deal with Jota, so Dan Burn would just drift out, not man-marking Salah necessarily, but close enough to him that if a ball came over the top, he could challenge for it. And if you look at Dan Burn's defensive contribution to this game, I've also included the headers he won as well. You'll see there is obviously a core of them in the centre of the pitch where he was having to defend, but you'll see quite a lot of them come out into this part of the pitch as those long balls into what should have been an exploitable area started to materialise. Like, if you are going aerial and the matchup is between Dan Burn and Mo Salah, that's probably not going to go well. And again, you'll remember, because you've got a memory, that I said they rotated Tonali and Joelinton in this game. Normally, Tonali's here, Joelinton's here, but they kind of swapped them around, as you can see from Joelinton's heat map. Why was that? It was the same reason. Joelinton is bigger and stronger and has a massive head compared to Tonali, so we basically screened the entire back four from them going over the top of the press. And for, again, 100 and odd minutes, however long it was, Liverpool could not figure out what to do here. Like, Newcastle are really good at high pressing. Like, Liverpool would have worked on that during the week. They're likely to get in our face. We've got to find a way to sort of get around this. And unable to play through it, going over the top of it is something they're quite happy to do. Like, Jota would drop away from the two centre-backs and find the pocket of space if they couldn't go in directly to Salah. But now there isn't a pocket of space there. There's fucking Joelinton. So I wouldn't know what to do either. No slight on Arne Slot. And in fact, if you just watched it on TV, you wouldn't have seen this, because I've watched it back and they cut to a replay when this happens. This screening of these long balls is actually what leads to Newcastle's second goal. Like, they panic in the press, they go really long, it goes into this area. Trippier and Joelinton bully the Liverpool players as it comes in, take the ball straight back, and from there, they move it really quickly out to the left-hand side, and that's how they get in. And I actually don't need to include the goal in this part of the analysis. I've sort of made my point, but here it is anyway, because am I going to get tired of seeing that? No. Actually, no, I can sort of make a point with this, because when it goes over the top, that becomes another physical duel between Murphy and Robertson. That was one of the 1v1s that he'd set up around the pitch, and Murphy wins that gets you the knockdown, and it goes in. You see, it's all in there if you look. And just to show you what a problem this was becoming for Liverpool, like, this is Kelleher's pass map from the whole match. And obviously there's loads of like successful, neat and tidy stuff around his box, but look at how many times Newcastle forced him to kick long over that press. Like, these are all the red ones, just the red ones. These are all the unsuccessful passes, so it was given away directly. But loads of these green ones that have gone down as successful might have gone to a Liverpool player first, yes, but because of the pressure Newcastle had on these balls, they would have lost it immediately straight after anyway. So this green is not accurate, in my opinion. It should mostly be red. And you combine all of this with all the times Newcastle directly went and got the ball back, and just, I mean, like, I know graphs and data don't tell you the whole story. Like, I'm so glad I was there for it, but like, that is domination. Like, against a team that's supposedly better than you, that is everything you could ever ask for a committed performance. Like, it's just working. But it's really important to also talk about how Newcastle adapted when it wasn't all working, because Liverpool were occasionally able, because they're a really good team, to slip through this press. There was a number of times after Jones came on, especially, where he was working himself out of these positions. Like, this is more or less immediately after he comes on, and Newcastle will think this is a brilliant situation. Like, he's facing his own goal, they're locking off all of his options. You can practically taste the eau de Peroni on the back of his neck from Sandro Tonali, and yet, one little drop of the shoulder and pass forward later, and he's taken half the Newcastle team out of the equation. Like, that's what they can do to you. But not to be all philosophical, right? If you're wondering at what point good strategy and game plans manifests itself into actually winning a game of football, look at the reaction to what Jones does here. How many of these players have their heads down and are now beginning a high intensity, but it's about an hour into this game, they're tired, a high intensity sprint. Not just jogging back, not just sort of trying to get back in a position, determination to make sure the fact they've just been taken out of the game doesn't become a problem. It's all of them, bar Isak, whose job is not to do that. There were only 8 seconds, and I did count them, between Jones slipping the press and that chance developing on the edge of the box. This was that really good one where Pope tipped it over the bar. So like, that's how dangerous this stuff can be. Only 8 seconds between that happening and the shot coming in, and look at how many bodies Newcastle have got back in this counter-attack. Like, Tonali and Bruno are wrong side of the ball when this happens, and they're closing down the shot 8 seconds later. That's what it takes. Like, even Tino Livramento, who, as discussed, his job was to go all the way up the touchline to press onto Jarrell Quansah, he's here when Jones gets through, and he's here when the shot comes in. The other part of Newcastle's game plan here is that when you fail to force them to kick it long, when you do get played through, you get back into a 4-5-1 mid-block, and you do defend the space like so many teams do against Liverpool. But the only way you can have both those things working at the same time, press high and defend deep, is if every single player grafts their arse off to get from one to the other. And Newcastle, to a man, did. Like, here's another example. This one's quite early on. Liverpool play through the press, and Newcastle are just lung busters left, right, and centre. Before Liverpool can do anything with the space they've created, they're back behind the ball, they're set to defend much deeper. And all of that, like, as much as scoring the goals, which I'm told you actually have to do to win games of football, is why Newcastle won this game of football. Like, an effective, ruthless implementation of an aggressive game plan, but everybody willing to run themselves into the ground on the rare occasions that it fails. Like, it sounds simple. It's fucking hard to do, but it is simple. Like, this whole thing from start to finish is a story about having the guts and the self-belief to just go 1v1 with some of the greatest players in the world and winning pretty much every single time, which is a lovely segue. I'm quite proud of this one. If the 1v1 in question is Alexis McAllister versus Dan Burn, that's about as good idea as having me mark a street lamp. Knowing that Liverpool largely defends only and thus put all their best headers in this really vital area of the box, Newcastle just didn't do that. They put all their best headers outside of that area and crossed directly to them. And you know what, right? I hesitate to say this because it does kind of feel like you're taking the shine off it for them, but the plan from these set pieces was not for Dan Burn to score. It was for Dan Burn to be out of these areas and win the first contact and then score with the second contact. Like, you can see that working earlier on in the game. Burn wins the header, shock and surprise, and it goes to Bruno, who should score from much closer in. Like, that's what they were trying to do, not somehow score a header from 13 or 14 yards out. But hey, when it's your day, it's your day. Anyway, yeah, that was it. Liverpool may have got a goal later on, but I can't really remember anything about that. 2-1 Newcastle United. They win the first trophy in 70 years, and I don't mind telling you, I cried my little eyes out. I was in like the 7th row, practically on the halfway line, and I sobbed into my Cellar branded scarf. And I'll tell you why, right? This is the tactic stuff's over. This is just a bit of a soapbox. Pull up a seat. I wanted to win this trophy, not because it had been 70 years and not even necessarily for me. I really wanted them to win it for this version of Newcastle United. Like, the club's going to change over the next couple of years. The whole reason they bought it, it's what the plan is, it's why they're talking about building a new stadium. There's going to be different players, the fan base is going to expand. The club could be very different in a couple of years, but there's so many players here. If you look through that squad that either survived Mike Ashley and Steve Bruce, like Joelinton, Cher, Jacob Murphy, they couldn't even get in that team. Callum Wilson, Dubravka, they were pretty much single-handedly keeping us up that year. Then loads of players who came in when we were at risk of relegation, who took a risk with their own careers. Dan Burn, Bruno, Trippier. And then all the players who came the following summer when there was no talk of Champions League football. And these were high reputation, exciting young stars who were taking a bit of a risk in coming here because nobody knew how it was going to go. Like, this team could look completely different in a couple of years. And I'm so pleased that it's a squad with Burn, Murphy and Longstaff, with Bruno, Tonali and Joelinton, with Lascelles, with Trippier. I'm so pleased that these lads get to say, we didn't just keep them up, we didn't just get them back in the Champions League, but we were the ones that whatever happens, history must record, we won that first trophy in a billion years. I wanted it for them. Not quite as much as I wanted it for me. I am selfish, but yeah, it's nice. It is nice for them. It's really nice for them. So, yeah, there you go. If you told me a year ago that the second ever video I do for The Independent in a channel that literally has my own name in the title would be about Newcastle winning a trophy, I would have said, I think you've probably had enough to drink. Now, mother, let's get you in that taxi. But yet, somehow, all of those things are true. So hi again. Yes, welcome to ACFC. It's only the second video. Things don't quite work like they're supposed to yet, but we're doing the video. So if you do have it in your heart, if you've enjoyed this or any stuff I've done previously, to tell people we're here, to tell people we're back, to share the videos around, to, like, I don't know, put it in a WhatsApp group. You've probably got friends. That is as valuable to us as anything YouTube can do with the platform. So I would be enormously grateful for that. And I reckon I've probably only got about 3 or 4 more videos of begging there. So enjoy it. Still no slick, sexy motion graphic with my social media handles on, but it is coming. I promise. That's probably just Comic Sans or something. You can get me on all the social medias at Adam Clery, CLERY. If you haven't done it yet, please do subscribe to us here at ACFC. I'm having a great time. But if I'm honest, not as great a time as I had on the 16th of March at Wembley Stadium, because that was the best day of my entire life. And that's why it happened. Thanks, goodbye, how are the lads? I love you enormously. Well, enormously strong. Enough. I love you the appropriate amount.